While the church reported a slight uptick in the number of conversions in 2019 during its general conference in April, that growth was offset by rapidly declining birth rates, which continue to fall despite the church's emphasis on traditional family values. As a result, growth is sitting at just over 1.5% annually, significantly less than the 3 to 4% annual growth rates the church enjoyed in the 1970s and 80s. In the LDS stronghold Utah, where more than half the population is raised LDS, protests and mass resignations tied to controversial church policies have made the news in recent years, like the report that the church has amassed a $100 billion stockpile using member tithes in the last 22 years, or the now-revoked 2015 policy banning the baptism of children with gay parents. The fund invests conservatively, Mr. Roger Clarke, the head of Ensign Peak Advisors, said, in part because it has a longer-term horizon than many other firms. On his office bookshelf, Mr. Clarke keeps a copy of Principles by Ray Dalio, the founder of Bridgewater Associates. He said Bridgewater deputies have visited in the past and that Mr. Dalio's firm helped us think about what's happening kind of in the broader economy. Bridgewater declined to comment. Mr. Clarke also keeps an ancient Roman coin in his office, a reference to the biblical story of the widow's mite, in which a poor widow donates to the temple treasury. It's just a reminder of the purpose of the funds, he said. Many of the funds come from people who don't make a lot of money. Mr. Clarke told the Wall Street Journal that one reason for the shell companies was to make church investments harder to track so that parishioners with insufficient information didn't mismanage their own portfolios by trying to mimic what Ensign Peak Advisors was doing. The Journal reported that the fund also owns Florida timberland and investments in big hedge funds. As to Clarke's concern, Quinn suspects only journalists, academics and historians will be interested in studying the portfolio. He doubts rank-and-file Latter-day Saints will refer to the SEC document for investment advice. Church officials have called the fund a rainy day account to help pay for operations in poorer parts of the world and at some future time when member donations stagnate. Mormon men live 10 years longer than other U.S. white males. Mormon women live more than 5 years longer than other U.S. white females. Those are among the results of a 25-year study into the health habits and the longevity of the Mormon lifestyle by non-Mormon UCLA professors James E. Enstrom and Lester Breslow, who summarized their research with the conclusion. Several healthy characteristics of the Mormon lifestyle are associated with substantially reduced death rates and increased life expectancy. Overall, the median number of children that Mormons had themselves was 2.42, which is still about 7/10 of a child higher than is typical of Americans as a whole, but not nearly as much of a spread as pertained in the early 1980s. Bottom line: Mormon families are still larger than the nation's. Church leadership is seeing this global church that is not able to sustain the sort of intense, demanding community that Mormons who grew up in Utah in the middle of the 20th century took for granted. The real question the LDS Church faces, Bowman says, is not whether to adopt more progressive social stances. It's whether the church is willing to adopt more diverse cultural perspectives or whether they want to hold to this 100-year-old idea of what Mormonism is. If they choose the latter, it will remain small.